My ex-wife broke up with her boyfriend 20 years younger and invited me to a reconciliation dinner. When I knocked on the door, her maid whispered, "Leave now, quickly." I froze and ran to my car. 5 minutes later. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and comment the city you're watching from. The phone rang at 7:30 on a Tuesday evening while I was heating up leftover pizza and wondering if this was what the rest of my 58 years would look like. 3 years of divorce had taught me to expect nothing but silence from that particular ringtone. So when Linda's name flashed across the screen, I nearly dropped my plate. "John?" Her voice was softer than I remembered, almost tentative. "I know this is unexpected, but I was wondering if you'd like to have dinner with me this Friday. At the house. The house. Our house. The one she'd gotten in the settlement, along with half of everything else I'd worked 30 years to build." I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair, the same cheap one I'd bought when I moved into this cramped apartment after she decided Jack Morrison was a better investment than 25 years of marriage. Why? The word came out harsher than I intended, but Linda had forfeited her right to pleasantries when she served me divorce papers while I was recovering from my heart surgery. "Jack and we're not together anymore." She paused, and I could hear something fragile in her voice. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, John, about us, about the mistakes I made." I stared at the wall where a wedding photo used to hang, back when I still believed in things like forever and "till death do us part." Linda had been 32 in that picture, radiant in her grandmother's lace dress, promising to love me in sickness and in health. She'd kept that promise for exactly 23 years, until my first heart attack made me more liability than asset. "I don't think that's a good idea, Linda. Please." The word cracked slightly. "I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need to try to make things right. I've missed you, John. I've missed us." There was something in her tone I couldn't quite place. Desperation, maybe. Or fear. Linda had never been one to admit weakness, and hearing her practically beg left me more confused than angry. What happened with Jack, I found myself asking, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. She hesitated. "He wasn't who I thought he was. I was so stupid, John, so incredibly stupid. You were right about everything." I remembered the fights we'd had in those last months before the divorce. How I'd tried to tell her that a 28-year-old personal trainer wasn't interested in a 50-year-old woman for her sparkling personality. How she'd screamed that I was jealous and controlling and that Jack made her feel alive again. "I need to see you," she continued. "Friday at 8. I'll make that salmon you always loved, the one with the dill sauce. We can talk properly, away from lawyers and paperwork, just you and me." My chest tightened, and for a moment I wondered if it was another heart episode or just the cruel irony of hope. 3 years of silence, of seeing our mutual friends awkwardly choose sides, of eating dinner alone while imagining her laughing with someone young enough to be our son. "I don't know, Linda. One dinner, John. That's all I'm asking. If you hate me afterward, if you never want to see me again, I'll understand. But please, just give me this one chance." I closed my eyes and saw her as she was on our wedding day, 19-year-old Linda Chambers, who worked at the diner downtown and dreamed of having a garden and babies and a husband who came home every night. Before the years wore us down, before my long hours at the accounting firm became a source of resentment rather than security, before she started looking at other men with the hunger she used to reserve for me. "Okay," I heard myself saying. "Friday at 8. Thank you, John. Thank you so much. You won't regret this, I promise." But as I hung up the phone, I already knew I would. Linda had a way of making promises she couldn't keep, and I had a way of believing them anyway. Friday came faster than I wanted it to. I spent the afternoon in my small bathroom trying to decide if I should wear the blue shirt Linda always said brought out my eyes, or if that would seem too eager. In the end, I went with a simple white button-down and the navy blazer she'd bought me for our 20th anniversary. The one she'd called distinguished when I was still distinguished enough to matter. The drive to Maple Street felt like traveling back in time. Every turn brought memories I'd tried to bury. The coffee shop where we'd had our first date, the park where I'd proposed, the medical center where everything started falling apart. I pulled into the driveway at 7:58, my hands trembling slightly as I turned off the engine. The house looked exactly the same. White colonial with black shutters, Linda's prize-winning roses blooming along the front porch. She'd always been proud of those roses, spending hours each weekend nurturing them while I worked in my study, oblivious to the fact that our marriage needed the same kind of attention. As I approached the front door, I noticed something odd. Maria Gonzalez, who had been our housekeeper for nearly 15 years, was peeking through the side window with an expression I'd never seen before. Fear. I raised my hand to knock, but before my knuckles touched the wood, Maria appeared at the door. She opened it just a crack, her usually warm brown eyes wide with something close to panic. "Mr. John," she whispered, glancing quickly over her shoulder, "you need to leave. Now." The urgency in her voice made my stomach clench. Maria had always been unflappable, the kind of woman who handled crisis with calm efficiency. To see her shaking was like watching a mountain crumble. "What's wrong? Is Linda okay?" "Please." Maria grabbed my arm through the door crack. "Get in your car and drive away. Don't ask questions. Don't look back. Just go." Every instinct I had was screaming that something was very wrong. Maria's grip on my arm was desperate, her whispered pleas filled with genuine terror. In all the years she'd worked for us, through arguments and reconciliations and everything in between, I'd never seen her like this. "Maria, what's happening?" "If you care about your life, you will leave right now," she hissed. "Mrs. Linda, she's not the same. Something very bad is going to happen tonight." My heart began to race, and this time I knew it wasn't from hope. Something in Maria's tone, in the way she kept glancing behind her, told me that whatever Linda had planned for tonight had nothing to do with reconciliation. Without another word, I turned and walked quickly back to my car, my hand shaking as I fumbled with the keys. As I pulled away from the curb, I could see Maria's face in my rearview mirror, watching from behind the curtains until I disappeared around the corner. I drove 3 blocks before pulling over, my mind reeling. What had Maria seen that terrified her so much? What was Linda planning that required my urgent escape? Something told me I was about to find out, and that whatever it was would change everything I thought I knew about the woman I'd once loved. I couldn't bring myself to drive home, not yet. Not with Maria's terrified face burned into my memory and questions clawing at my chest like hungry animals. Instead, I found myself circling back toward Maple Street, parking 2 blocks away, where I could see the house but remain hidden behind Mrs. Patterson's overgrown hedge. The smart thing would have been to trust Maria's warning and forget about whatever twisted game Linda was playing. But 25 years of marriage had taught me that Linda never did anything without a reason, and her reasons usually involved getting exactly what she wanted, regardless of who got hurt in the process. I turned off my headlights and waited, feeling like some kind of stalker but unable to leave. The street was quiet, lined with the kind of suburban houses where families lived normal lives and ex-husbands didn't sit in their cars, wondering if their former wives had gone completely insane. At 8:20, a silver BMW pulled into the driveway. I recognized it immediately, Jack Morrison's car, the one he'd bought with the money from selling his personal training business. The same car I'd seen in my driveway countless times during those final months of my marriage, back when I was still naive enough to believe Linda's excuses about fitness consultations. But something was wrong. Jack sat in his car for nearly 10 minutes before getting out, and when he finally did, his movements were jerky, agitated. Even from 2 blocks away, I could see that his usual cocky swagger was gone, replaced by something that looked disturbingly like panic. Linda appeared on the front porch before Jack reached the door, and even in the dim porch light, I could see the tension in her posture. She wasn't the composed woman who had called me 3 days ago, voice dripping with manufactured vulnerability. This Linda looked frayed, desperate. They disappeared inside, and I found myself checking my watch obsessively. 8:26, 8:31, 8:37. What was happening in there? Why had Maria been so terrified? And why did I have the growing certainty that if I had walked through that door tonight, I might not have walked back out? At 8:42, the front door burst open. Linda emerged first, moving quickly toward the side of the house where she kept her gardening supplies. Jack followed, talking rapidly and gesticulating with his hands. I couldn't hear the words, but his body language screamed argument. Linda returned carrying a large plastic tarp and what looked like a shovel. My blood turned to ice water in my veins. People didn't need tarps and shovels for dinner conversations. They needed them for things that required cleanup, permanent cleanup. I fumbled for my phone, thinking I should call the police, but what would I tell them? That my ex-wife was holding gardening supplies while talking to her ex-boyfriend, that our housekeeper had told me to leave? It sounded insane, even in my own head. Jack grabbed Linda's arm and she yanked away from him violently. Even at this distance, I could see that they were both frightened. Not angry, frightened. The kind of fear that comes when you've crossed a line you can't uncross, and the consequences are closing in fast. They went back inside, and the house fell dark, except for a single light in what used to be my study. Linda's silhouette moved back and forth past the window, and I realized she was pacing. Frantic, caged animal pacing that I'd only seen once before during the week her father died, and she'd discovered he'd left everything to her estranged brother. My phone buzzed with a text message, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was from Linda. "Where are you? We had dinner plans." I stared at the screen, my hand shaking slightly. She was texting me while standing in a darkened house with Jack Morrison, gardening supplies, and God only knew what else. The casual normalcy of the message made it somehow more terrifying. I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another text. "John, I'm worried about you. Please call me." Then, "I made your favorite salmon. It's getting cold." Then, "I know you're probably having second thoughts, but we really need to talk tonight. It's important." The texts kept coming, each one more urgent than the last. Linda was clearly panicking, but not because she missed me or wanted reconciliation. She was panicking because whatever she had planned required my presence, and I wasn't cooperating. At 9:15, Jack came out alone. He moved quickly to his car, threw something into the trunk, and drove away with the kind of speed that suggested he was either chasing something or being chased. Either way, it wasn't the behavior of someone enjoying a quiet evening at home. Linda emerged from the house 5 minutes later. She stood on the front porch in her robe, looking up and down the street, as if searching for something or someone. Her phone was pressed to her ear, and even though I couldn't hear her voice, I could see the agitation in every line of her body. My own phone rang. Linda's name flashed across the screen, and I felt my heart hammering against my ribs. After 5 rings, I let it go to voicemail. She called again immediately, and again. By the 4th call, I could see her through the window, moving frantically around the living room, her free hand gesturing wildly as she spoke. I finally answered on the 7th call. "John, thank God." Linda's voice was breathless, desperate. "Where are you? I've been waiting for over an hour." "I'm not coming, Linda." Silence, then carefully. "What do you mean you're not coming? We had plans. I made dinner. Whatever you're planning, I want no part of it." Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Gone was the desperate woman who'd been calling non-stop. In her place was someone calculating, dangerous. "I don't know what you think you know, John, but you're wrong. I just wanted to have dinner with my ex-husband." "Is that so hard to believe?" "The truth, Linda. For once in your life, just tell me the truth." I heard her breathing on the other end of the line, slow and measured. In the house, I could see her shadow moving past the window again. "The truth is that I made a mistake with Jack. The truth is that I miss what we had. The truth is that I'm trying to fix things before it's too late." Too late for what? The question hung in the air between us like a loaded gun. Linda's shadow stopped moving, and for a moment the only sound was our synchronized breathing through the phone connection. "Too late to make things right," she whispered finally. "John, there are things you don't understand. Things about Jack, about what's been happening. I need your help." "What kind of things? Not over the phone?" "Please, just come inside. We can talk properly, like civilized people, like we used to." I looked at the darkened house, at Linda's silhouette in the window, at the spot where Jack's car had been parked. Whatever was happening here tonight, it had nothing to do with civilized conversation and everything to do with the kind of desperation that made people do unthinkable things. No, Linda, whatever this is, handle it yourself. I hung up and immediately turned off my phone. In the distance, I could see Linda moving frantically around the house, lights flicking on and off in different rooms. She was searching for something, or maybe destroying something. Either way, I knew with absolute certainty that Maria's warning had probably saved my life. As I finally drove away from Maple Street, one thought echoed in my mind. What had Jack Morrison done that was so terrible it required tarps and shovels? And what had my ex-wife become that she thought I would help her cover it up? I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Linda's frantic silhouette moving through our old house, heard the desperation in her voice when she begged me to come inside. By 6 a.m, I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago, staring at my phone and trying to decide if I should call the police. But call them about what? That my ex-wife had gardening supplies and was acting strangely? That her ex-boyfriend had driven away quickly? It sounded ridiculous in the daylight, like the paranoid fantasies of a bitter divorced man who couldn't accept that his former life had moved on without him. Around 8:30, my phone rang. I'd turned it back on an hour earlier, half expecting a barrage of messages from Linda, but there had been nothing. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. John?" Maria's voice was barely a whisper. "I cannot talk long. She is in the shower." "Maria, what's going on? What were you so afraid of last night?" "You must listen very carefully. Mrs. Linda, she is in very big trouble. That man, Jack, he has been doing terrible things to her. Pictures, videos, very bad things." My stomach dropped. "What kind of pictures?" "Private pictures of Mrs. Linda with other men. Many men. During your marriage?" The words hit me like a physical blow. I set my coffee cup down with shaking hands, feeling sick. Linda had been having affairs throughout our marriage, and somehow Jack had evidence of it. "How do you know this?" "Yesterday morning, Jack came to the house very angry. He was shouting, saying he needed money or he would show everyone the pictures. Mrs. Linda was crying, begging him not to. He said he needed $50,000 by tonight or he would send everything to the newspapers, to her family, to you." $50,000. My mind reeled trying to process this information. Jack had been blackmailing Linda with evidence of her infidelities, and she didn't have the money to pay him. "Maria, why didn't you call the police?" "Mrs. Linda, she made me promise not to tell anyone. She said if the pictures came out, it would destroy her completely. But last night, when you were coming for dinner," Maria's voice broke. "She said she had a plan to fix everything. She said you would help her prove that Jack was lying, that the pictures were fake." "How could I help her prove that?" "She wanted you to say that she was always home with you during the times in the pictures. She wanted you to be her, what do you call it, alibi witness. She said, if you testified that she was faithful during your marriage, no one would believe Jack's evidence." I felt the walls of my small apartment closing in around me. Linda hadn't invited me for reconciliation. She'd wanted to use me as a character witness to discredit Jack's blackmail evidence. She was going to ask me to lie under oath about the very infidelities that had destroyed our marriage. "But that's not why she was so frightened last night," I said slowly. "There's something else." Maria was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. "Jack is not just blackmailing Mrs. Linda. He has been taking money from his other clients too. Rich women. He seduces them, takes pictures, then demands money. The police, they are looking for him. Mrs. Linda found out yesterday that he might go to prison for a long time. And if Jack goes to prison, the pictures of Mrs. Linda would come out anyway. During the investigation, everything would be made public." I understood now. Linda wasn't just facing embarrassment or divorce court testimony. She was facing public humiliation on a scale that would destroy her reputation, her social standing, everything she'd built her identity around. In our social circle, where appearances mattered more than truth, Those pictures would make her a pariah. Maria, where is Jack now? I do not know. He left last night very upset. Mrs. Linda, she tried to call him many times, but he does not answer. She is very scared that he will do something desperate. A chill ran down my spine. Men who were facing prison time and had nothing left to lose were capable of anything. If Jack felt cornered, if he thought his blackmail scheme was falling apart, he might decide to release everything out of spite. What was Linda's plan for last night? What did she want me to do? Maria hesitated. She wanted to make Jack think that you two were getting back together. She thought if Jack believed you might remarry, he would be less likely to release the pictures because it would hurt you too. She hoped it would buy her time to find the money. And if I refused? I think... Maria's voice dropped to almost nothing. I think she was going to try to convince you anyway, maybe show you some of the pictures herself, make you understand how much she needed your help. I felt sick. Linda had been prepared to show me evidence of her betrayals, to use my own pain as leverage to get what she needed. The woman I'd loved for 25 years had been willing to reopen every wound Jack had inflicted on our marriage if it served her purposes. Mr. John, you must stay away from her. She is not thinking clearly. Yesterday she kept talking about how this was all Jack's fault, how he ruined her life. But she also said that you were the only one who could save her now. I'm not saying her from anything, Maria. This is the bed she made. I know, but desperate people, they do desperate things. Promise me you will be careful. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, trying to process everything Maria had told me. Linda's entire adult life had been built on the image of being the perfect wife, the respectable woman who married her high school sweetheart and lived happily ever after. The reality was that she'd been living a lie for years, and now that lie was about to destroy her. Part of me felt vindicated. After 3 years of wondering if I'd been too suspicious, too controlling, too quick to assume the worst about her relationship with Jack, I finally had confirmation that my instincts had been right. Linda had been unfaithful, repeatedly and systematically. But another part of me felt something unexpected, pity. Whatever Linda had done, being blackmailed and terrorized, wasn't justice. It was just another form of abuse. My phone buzzed with a text message. Linda again. John, I know you're angry, but please call me back. I can explain everything. What Jack told you isn't true. I stared at the message, wondering what story she would try to sell me now. Would she deny the affairs? Claim the pictures were doctored? Try to convince me that Jack was the real villain in all of this? Another text. He's threatening to hurt me, John. I'm scared and I don't know what to do. Please don't abandon me now. Then, I know I don't deserve your help after everything I've done, but I'm begging you. I made mistakes, but I don't deserve this. I turned off my phone again. Whatever sympathy I might have felt for Linda's situation was overwhelmed by the memory of how she'd planned to use me. She hadn't reached out because she missed me or wanted reconciliation. She'd contacted me because I was useful, because my testimony could help her escape the consequences of her choices. The irony wasn't lost on me. For 3 years I'd fantasized about Linda realizing her mistake and wanting me back. But when she finally called, it wasn't love that motivated her. It was the same calculating selfishness that had characterized our entire marriage. I spent the rest of the day trying to distract myself with errands and household chores, but my mind kept circling back to one question. Where was Jack Morrison, and what was he planning to do with those pictures? By evening, I had my answer. At 6:30, my phone rang from another unknown number. This time, it wasn't Maria. John, this is Linda. I'm calling from a friend's phone because Jack took mine. Her voice was different now, not desperate or calculating, but empty, defeated. He's gone, John. Jack is gone, and he took everything with him. What do you mean gone? He cleaned out his apartment sometime last night or this morning. His landlord said he broke his lease and left in the middle of the night. He's disappeared completely, and he has all the pictures, all the evidence of everything I did. I felt a chill of understanding. Jack hadn't just been blackmailing Linda. He'd been preparing for this moment, when the pressure became too much and he needed to vanish completely. And when he left, he'd taken with him the power to destroy Linda's life whenever he chose to use it. I'm ruined, John. Even if he never releases those pictures, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering when they're going to surface. I'll never be free of this. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, Linda sounded like she was telling the complete truth. And the truth was that she was trapped in a hell of her own making, with no escape and no way forward. It should have been satisfying. After everything she'd put me through, Linda was finally facing real consequences for her actions. But as I listened to the broken woman on the other end of the phone, all I felt was exhausted sadness. I'm sorry, Linda, I really am. But this isn't my problem to solve. I know, she whispered. I know it isn't. I just wanted you to know that you were right about everything. About Jack, about the kind of person I became. You deserved so much better than me. The line went dead, and I was left alone with the strange emptiness that comes after a long war finally ends. Linda's admission should have felt like victory, but instead it felt like the final death of something that had been beautiful once, a very long time ago. I had no way of knowing that the real nightmare was just beginning. 3 days passed in eerie silence. I found myself checking the news obsessively, half expecting to see Linda's private life splashed across the internet or headlines about missing blackmailers, but there was nothing. It was as if Jack Morrison had simply evaporated from existence, taking Linda's secrets with him into whatever new life he was building somewhere else. I was beginning to think the worst was over when Linda called me again on Thursday morning. This time she didn't bother with pleasantries or manipulation. Her voice was raw, stripped of every pretense I'd ever heard her use. John, I need to tell you something about Jack, about what really happened. I was tempted to hang up to protect myself from whatever new revelation would undoubtedly make everything more complicated. But something in her tone stopped me. This wasn't the calculated Linda who had tried to lure me back for dinner, or even the defeated Linda who had called to confess her affairs. This was a woman on the edge of complete breakdown. I'm listening. Jack didn't just disappear. I mean, he did disappear, but not the way I told you. He didn't run away with the pictures. She took a shaky breath. John, Jack is dead. The words hit me like ice water. What? He died in a car accident Tuesday night. His car went off Highway 67 around midnight. The police said he was driving too fast, probably drunk. The car caught fire when it hit the tree, and everything inside was destroyed. I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair, trying to process this information. Jack Morrison, the man who had been terrorizing Linda with blackmail evidence, who had disappeared with the power to destroy her life, was dead. And if his car had burned, the pictures? Gone, all of them. His phone, his laptop, everything was in the car. The police said the fire was so intense that nothing survived. I should have felt relief for Linda's sake, or at least some kind of closure. Instead, I felt a growing unease. The timing was too convenient, too perfectly aligned with Linda's desperate need for those pictures to disappear. How did you find out? His landlord called me yesterday. Apparently, I was listed as his emergency contact. Linda's voice cracked. John, there's something else. Something I haven't told you. What? Jack didn't just have pictures of me with other men. He had evidence that I was paying for those relationships. Money, gifts, expensive vacations. He wasn't just documenting my affairs. He was documenting the fact that I was essentially buying companionship. The admission hung between us like a poison cloud. Linda hadn't just been unfaithful during our marriage. She'd been paying men to be with her, using our joint accounts and credit cards to fund a secret life that would have destroyed us both if it had come to light during the divorce proceedings. How much money, Linda? Over the last 5 years of our marriage, probably around $200,000. $200,000. Money that should have been ours, money that could have secured a comfortable retirement, money that Linda had spent on a parade of younger men who were willing to pretend to care about her in exchange for expensive gifts and exotic trips. My God, Linda, how did you hide that much spending? The charity account, she whispered. The one we set up for tax write-offs. I had the statement sent to a P.O. box and told you the receipts were for donations to various causes. You never questioned it because you trusted me to handle the charitable giving. I felt physically sick. For years I'd been proud of Linda's philanthropic spirit, bragging to friends about how generous she was with local charities. In reality, she'd been using our charity fund as her personal escort service account. Jack found out about all of it somehow. He had bank records, receipts, photographs of me with these men at expensive restaurants and hotels. He said if I didn't pay him $50,000, he would send everything to the IRS and to you and to everyone we knew. So you killed him? The words came out before I could stop them. Linda gasped as if I'd slapped her. No, John, no. I couldn't. It was an accident, a real accident. I swear to you on my mother's grave I had nothing to do with Jack's death. But even as she protested, I could hear the relief in her voice. Jack's death had solved all her problems. The blackmail evidence was gone, the threat to her reputation eliminated, the risk of criminal charges for tax evasion removed. It was almost too perfect to be coincidental. Where were you Tuesday night? At home, alone. I know how that sounds, but I was there all night, drinking wine and trying to figure out how to come up with $50,000. I didn't even know Jack was dead until yesterday morning. I wanted to believe her. Despite everything Linda had put me through, the idea that she was capable of murder seemed impossible. She was manipulative and selfish and dishonest, but she'd never been violent. The Linda I knew wouldn't hurt a spider, much less orchestrate someone's death. But the Linda I knew wouldn't have spent $200,000 on affairs either. The Linda I knew wouldn't have tried to use me as a pawn in her blackmail situation. How well did I really know my ex-wife at all? John, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. What? You think I'm capable of murder? The question caught me off guard. Linda's voice was small, frightened, like a child asking for reassurance about monsters under the bed. I don't know, I said finally. 3 months ago, I would have said no without hesitation. But 3 months ago, I didn't know about the affairs or the money or any of this. I'm not sure I know you well enough anymore to say what you're capable of. Linda was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. I've been lying to myself for so long, I'm not sure I know any more either. Those men, the affairs, the spending. It started small, just dinner with someone who made me feel attractive again. Then it became more, and before I knew it, I was living this completely double life. Why, Linda? Why throw away 25 years for strangers? Because you stopped seeing me, she said simply. Not all at once, but gradually. You worked longer hours, talked to me less, touched me less. I felt invisible in my own marriage. And when Jack started paying attention to me at the gym, when he told me I was beautiful and exciting and worth pursuing, I'd forgotten what that felt like. I closed my eyes, remembering those last years of our marriage. The long days at the accounting firm during tax season. The weekends I spent in my study, catching up on work or dealing with my mother's declining health. The nights I fell asleep in front of the television instead of coming to bed with Linda. Had I been so absorbed in my own life that I'd failed to notice my wife disappearing into someone else's arms? Had my neglect driven her to seek validation from men who were only interested in what she could buy them? That doesn't excuse what you did, I said finally. Feeling neglected doesn't justify stealing money or having affairs. I know, I'm not trying to excuse it. I'm just trying to explain how it happened, how I became someone I don't even recognize. So what happens now? Jack is dead, the evidence is destroyed. You get away with all of it? Do I? Linda's voice was hollow. I'm alone, John, completely alone. I have no friends left because I drove them all away with my lies. My family won't speak to me because of the divorce. And you'll never forgive me, will you? I thought about her question for a long time. Forgiveness felt impossible when the wounds were still so fresh, when I was still discovering new layers of betrayal. But hatred felt exhausting too. I was 58 years old, recovering from a heart attack, starting over in a small apartment. Did I really want to spend whatever years I had left carrying this much anger? I don't know if I can forgive you, I said honestly, but I don't want to hate you anymore either. It's too much work and I'm too tired. Linda let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. I keep thinking about our wedding day, she said. Do you remember what you said in your vows? You promised to love me even when I made it difficult, even when I was my worst self. I did remember. I'd written those vows myself, meaning every word. I'd promised to love Linda through good times and bad, through sickness and health, through whatever challenges life might throw at us. I just never imagined that the biggest challenge would be Linda herself. I kept that promise for 23 years, I said quietly. But there's a difference between making it difficult and burning the whole house down. I know there is. And I know I have no right to ask you this, but could you please just not hate me? I can live with your indifference or your disappointment, but I can't live knowing that you hate me. I stared out my kitchen window at the parking lot of my apartment complex, thinking about the strange turns life takes. A week ago, I'd been a divorced man living a quiet, predictable existence. Now I was somehow part of a story involving blackmail, affairs, embezzlement, and a convenient death that might or might not have been an accident. I don't hate you, Linda. I'm angry and hurt and confused, but I don't hate you. Thank you, she whispered. That's more than I deserve. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, trying to sort through everything I'd learned. Jack Morrison was dead, taking Linda's secrets with him to the grave. Linda was free from blackmail, but trapped in a life she'd destroyed through her own choices. And I was left wondering if justice had been served, or if sometimes the universe just handed out lucky breaks to people who didn't deserve them. But something nagged at me about Linda's story, something about the timing, the convenience of Jack's death, the perfect resolution to an impossible situation. I couldn't shake the feeling that there were still pieces of this puzzle I hadn't seen yet. And as it turned out, I was right to be suspicious. I couldn't let it go. For 3 days after Linda's confession about Jack's death, something kept gnawing at me. Maybe it was the accountant in me, trained to notice when numbers didn't add up. Maybe it was the bitter experience of being married to someone who could lie so convincingly that I'd believed her for years. Either way, I found myself doing something I never thought I'd do. Investigating my ex-wife. It started innocently enough. I told myself I just wanted to verify Linda's story about Jack's accident, to put my suspicions to rest so I could finally move on with my life. I called the State Highway Patrol and asked about accidents on Highway 67 the previous Tuesday night. Single vehicle accident around midnight, the officer confirmed. 28-year-old male. Vehicle caught fire after impact with a tree. Appears to have been driving under the influence. Was there anything suspicious about the accident? No, sir. Pretty straightforward. Happens more often than you'd think on that stretch of highway. Lots of curves. Easy to misjudge your speed when you've been drinking. I should have been satisfied with that answer. Should have accepted that sometimes bad people meet bad ends through their own poor choices. But I couldn't shake the memory of Linda's voice when she told me Jack was dead. Not shocked or grieved, but relieved, almost triumphant. So I drove to Jack's apartment complex. The building was one of those modern developments that looked expensive from the outside but felt cheap once you got close. The kind of place a personal trainer with expensive tastes might live if he couldn't quite afford the lifestyle he was selling. I found the building manager, a tired-looking woman named Carol, and told her I was looking into Jack Morrison's disappearance for insurance purposes. Terrible thing, Carol said, shaking her head. Such a young man. Though I can't say I'm surprised he came to a bad end. What do you mean? Well, he wasn't exactly the most stable tenant I've ever had. Always behind on rent. Lots of different women coming and going at all hours. And lately, he'd been acting very strange. Paranoid, you might say. Paranoid? How? Carol glanced around as if Jack might materialize from the landscaping. He kept saying someone was following him. Asked me to change his locks twice in the past month. Last week, he wanted to know if anyone had been asking questions about him. My pulse quickened. Had anyone been asking questions? Not until that woman came by on Tuesday afternoon. What woman? Older lady, very well dressed, said she was Jack's aunt. Wanted to check on him because the family was worried. I thought it was sweet, you know. Most of his visitors weren't exactly the family type, if you catch my meaning. Did you let her into his apartment? Oh no, I can't do that. But she seemed so concerned, and Jack wasn't answering his door. She said she'd wait in the parking lot until he got home. I felt cold despite the warm afternoon sun. What did this woman look like? Carol described Linda perfectly. The ash blonde hair, the expensive handbag, even the nervous way she twisted her wedding ring when she talked. Linda had been at Jack's apartment the afternoon before his fatal accident, pretending to be his concerned aunt. Did you see when she left? Around 6 o'clock, I think. Jack got home not long after that, and I saw them talking by his car. Seemed like a friendly conversation, nothing dramatic. After leaving the apartment complex, I drove to Highway 67. I told myself I was just curious, that I wanted to see where Jack's life had ended. But deep down, I was looking for something that would either confirm Linda's innocence or prove my growing suspicions. The accident site was easy to find. Fresh skid marks on the asphalt, scorched earth where the car had burned, a telephone pole marked with flowers left by someone who had cared about Jack Morrison. I stood there for a long time, trying to reconstruct what had happened. The skid marks told a story. Jack had been driving fast, probably too fast, but he'd tried to brake before the curve. The marks were straight and controlled, not the erratic swerving of a drunk driver. Whatever had caused him to lose control, it hadn't been alcohol-induced confusion. I was about to leave when I noticed something glinting in the tall grass beside the road. I pushed through the weeds and found pieces of broken glass that didn't look like they'd come from car headlights. The glass was thicker, darker, like the kind used in beer bottles. I collected several pieces and drove to the nearest police station. The desk sergeant looked skeptical when I explained my concerns about Jack's accident, but he agreed to let me speak with the investigating officer. Detective Martinez was a serious woman in her 40s who listened to my story without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and studied me carefully. "Mr. Henderson, what exactly are you suggesting happened to Mr. Morrison?" "I think someone might have tampered with his car or thrown something at his windshield while he was driving. Based on some broken glass you found beside the road." When she put it like that, it sounded ridiculous. I was a 58-year-old accountant with no investigative experience, trying to convince a professional detective that my ex-wife was a murderer based on fragments of glass and a feeling in my gut. The toxicology report showed Mr. Morrison had a blood alcohol level of 0.12, Detective Martinez continued. Well above the legal limit, combined with his speed and the dangerous curve, it's a textbook case of impaired driving leading to a fatal accident. But the glass could have come from anywhere. People throw trash out of cars all the time. Beer bottles break. It doesn't mean anything sinister happened. I left the police station feeling foolish and frustrated. Detective Martinez was right, of course. I had no real evidence of foul play, just suspicions based on my knowledge of Linda's desperation and capacity for deception. But as I drove home, I couldn't stop thinking about the timing. Linda had visited Jack on Tuesday afternoon. That same night, Jack had died in a convenient accident that destroyed all the evidence he'd been using to blackmail her. It was possible that Linda had simply gotten incredibly lucky. It was also possible that she'd helped her luck along. My phone was ringing when I got back to my apartment. Linda's number flashed on the screen, and for a moment I considered not answering, but curiosity won out over caution. "John, I need to see you. It's important." Her voice was different again, not desperate or defeated, but urgent in a way that made my stomach clench. "What's wrong now, Linda? I can't talk about this over the phone. Can you meet me somewhere? Neutral ground? Somewhere public?" Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop downtown. Linda was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with her hands wrapped around a mug like she was trying to absorb its warmth. She looked older than when I'd last seen her, worn down by stress and sleepless nights. "Thank you for coming," she said, as I sat across from her. "I wasn't sure you would." "What's this about, Linda?" She glanced around the coffee shop, making sure we couldn't be overheard. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Someone knows about Jack." "Knows what about Jack?" "That he didn't die in an accident." My blood turned to ice. "What are you saying?" Linda reached into her purse and pulled out a single sheet of paper. She slid it across the table to me with trembling fingers. It was a photocopy of what looked like a police report, but the details made no sense. According to this document, Jack Morrison's car had been found with evidence of tampering. The brake lines had been cut. Where did you get this? Someone slipped it under my door this morning, along with a note. She handed me a second piece of paper. The message was typed, anonymous. I know what you did to Jack Morrison. $50,000 or the real police report goes public. You have 48 hours. I stared at the papers, my mind reeling. If this police report was real, then Jack hadn't died in a drunk driving accident. Someone had sabotaged his car, and that someone had been Linda. And now, just like Jack before them, someone else was blackmailing her. Is this real? I asked. Linda's eyes filled with tears. I don't know. Maybe. John, I swear to you, I didn't kill Jack. But someone wants people to think I did, and they have what looks like evidence to prove it. Who would do this? I have no idea. It could be anyone. Someone who knew about the blackmail, someone who wants to frame me, someone who... She trailed off, her face going pale. Someone who what? Someone who killed Jack themselves and wants to pin it on me. The possibility hung between us like a loaded gun. Jack Morrison had been blackmailing Linda, but he might have been blackmailing other people too. What if one of his other victims had decided to eliminate the threat permanently? What if Linda was being set up to take the fall for someone else's crime? What are you going to do? I don't know. I don't have $50,000. And even if I did, paying this person would just make me look more guilty. But if they released this fake police report, it would destroy you completely. Linda nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I know I deserve a lot of things, John. I know I've made terrible choices and hurt people I loved. But I don't deserve to go to prison for a murder I didn't commit. I studied her face, looking for any sign that she was lying. After 3 days of suspecting her of Jack's murder, I was now being asked to believe that someone else had killed him and was framing her for it. It was possible, but it was also exactly the kind of story Linda would tell if she was guilty and desperate. Why are you telling me this? What do you want from me? I want you to help me figure out who's doing this. You always were good at solving puzzles, at seeing patterns other people missed. I need someone I can trust, someone who knows me well enough to know when I'm telling the truth. Do I know you well enough for that, Linda? After everything that's happened? She was quiet for a long time, staring into her coffee cup. When she looked up, her eyes were red, but determined. There's something else I need to tell you, something I should have told you years ago, but I was too ashamed. I waited, not sure I could handle another revelation. I've been seeing a therapist since our divorce, trying to understand why I made the choices I made, why I destroyed everything good in my life, and she helped me remember something I'd buried for a long time. What? When I was 17, before we met, I was assaulted by someone I trusted, someone older, someone who was supposed to take care of me. I never told anyone, not even you, but it changed me, John. It made me feel like I was only valuable for what I could give people, like love was something I had to earn by being perfect or useful or available. My throat tightened. In 25 years of marriage, Linda had never mentioned any trauma from her past. I'd always wondered why she seemed so desperate for validation, so willing to compromise herself to please others. The affairs, the spending, even trying to use you to get out of the blackmail situation. It all traces back to that night when I learned that people who are supposed to love you can hurt you instead. I've been trying to control that hurt ever since, and I've made a mess of everything. She wiped her eyes with a napkin, struggling to compose herself. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand something. I may have been unfaithful, and I may have stolen money, and I may have lied about more things than I can count. But I am not a killer, John. Whatever else I am, I'm not that. I believed her. God help me. After everything she'd put me through, I still believed her when it really mattered. The woman sitting across from me was broken and desperate and deeply flawed. But she wasn't a murderer, which meant someone else was. And that someone was using Linda's past mistakes to cover their own crime. 48 hours, I said quietly. What? You said they gave you 48 hours. That's not much time to figure out who killed Jack and why they're framing you for it. Linda's eyes widened with hope and terror. Does that mean you'll help me? I thought about the smart answer, the safe answer. I thought about my peaceful apartment and my quiet retirement plans and all the reasons why I should walk away from this mess and never look back. Then I thought about 25 years of marriage, about the scared 17-year-old girl Linda had been when someone first taught her that love and pain were the same thing, about the possibility that she might go to prison for a crime she didn't commit while the real killer walked free. "Yes," I heard myself saying, "I'll help you. But this time, Linda, you tell me everything. No more lies, no more manipulation, no more games. If we're going to solve this, I need the complete truth about everything." "You'll have it," she promised. "I swear to you, John, no more lies." As we left the coffee shop together, I wondered if I was making the biggest mistake of my life. But for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I had a purpose again, and sometimes that's worth the risk. The truth came to me at 3 in the morning, the way truth often does when your conscious mind finally stops trying to control the narrative. I was lying awake in my small bedroom, staring at the ceiling and thinking about everything Linda had told me, when suddenly the pieces clicked into place with almost audible clarity. It wasn't about Jack's other blackmail victims. It wasn't about Linda being framed by a mysterious enemy. It was much simpler and much more devastating than that. Linda had been lying to me again. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding, as the full scope of her deception became clear. The fake police report, the anonymous blackmail note, the desperate plea for help. It was all an elaborate performance designed to accomplish exactly what it had accomplished. To make me feel sorry for her, to make me want to protect her, to draw me back into her orbit as her rescuer and defender. Linda hadn't killed Jack Morrison, but she hadn't been randomly targeted by his real killer either. She had created this entire scenario herself, fabricating evidence of her own guilt in order to manipulate me into helping her one more time. The woman who had spent $200,000 of our money on affairs, who had tried to use me as a false alibi witness, who had called me for reconciliation dinner as part of an elaborate scheme, was still playing games. Even her confession about childhood trauma, her tears, her apparent vulnerability, it was all designed to push exactly the right buttons to make me care about her again. I got dressed and drove to Linda's house, my anger building with each mile. It was 4:30 in the morning when I rang her doorbell, but I didn't care. I was done being manipulated, done being the fool who fell for her act every single time. Linda answered the door in her robe, her hair disheveled, and her eyes wide with surprise. "John, what are you doing here? It's the middle of the night. We need to talk, now." She stepped aside to let me in, and I found myself back in the house that had once been mine, surrounded by furniture I'd helped choose, and memories I'd tried to forget. "You faked it," I said without preamble. "The police report, the blackmail note, all of it. You made it up." Linda's face went through a series of expressions, surprise, confusion, and then something that looked almost like relief. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Stop lying, Linda. I'm done with the lies. Jack Morrison died in a drunk driving accident exactly the way the police said he did. There was no brake tampering, no murder, no mysterious killer framing you. You created that fake police report yourself. Probably had it printed at one of those copy shops that don't ask questions. Then you typed up a blackmail note and slipped it under your own door." She sat down heavily on the couch, her hand shaking slightly. "Why would I do something like that?" "Because you're desperate and alone, and you can't stand the thought of actually facing the consequences of your actions. Because you realized that, with Jack dead, you might actually get away with everything you've done, but only if you could convince me, that you're still a victim rather than someone who finally got lucky." Linda was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. When she looked up, the tears were gone, and her expression was eerily calm. "You always were too smart for your own good, John." The admission hung between us like a confession. No anger, no denial, just tired acceptance of being caught in yet another lie. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since Tuesday night, when Jack died." I was relieved at first because it meant all the evidence was gone and I was free. But then I realized something else was gone too. "What?" "You. The possibility of ever having you back in my life, even as a friend. I'd used up all my chances, told too many lies, hurt you too many times. This was my last play, John." My last chance to make you care about me again. I felt a strange mix of disgust and pity. Even now, even caught in the act of manipulating me, Linda was still trying to frame her deception as love. So you decided to fake being in danger, so I'd come running to save you? I know how it sounds, but those 48 hours we spent together, trying to solve a mystery that didn't exist, weren't those some of the best conversations we'd had in years? Didn't you feel like we were a team again? She was right, and that made it even worse. I had enjoyed working with Linda to unravel what I thought was a genuine threat. For a brief moment, I'd remembered what it felt like to be partners instead of adversaries, and she had manufactured that entire feeling to serve her own emotional needs. I never asked you to save me from Jack's blackmail, she continued. I never asked you to help me cover up a murder. All I wanted was for you to remember that we used to be good together, that there was a time when you loved me enough to fight for me, and you thought the best way to remind me of that was to lie to me again? Linda's composure finally cracked. I don't know how to tell the truth anymore, John. I've been lying for so long that honesty feels impossible. Even when I told you about the assault, about the therapy, part of me was calculating how it would affect you, how I could use your compassion to get what I needed. The casual admission of her manipulation was somehow more shocking than all the elaborate deceptions that had come before. Linda had weaponized her own trauma, turned her most vulnerable moment into another tool for controlling my emotions. What did you need, Linda? What was the point of all this? I needed to matter to someone again. I needed to feel like I was worth saving, worth caring about. Everyone else has written me off. My family, my friends, even Maria quit last week. You're the only person left who knew me before I became this pathetic creature who lies about everything. I looked around the living room where we'd spent thousands of evenings together, where we'd celebrated birthdays and anniversaries and quiet Tuesday nights when just being together felt like enough. All of it felt like ancient history now, artifacts from a civilization that no longer existed. I can't do this anymore, Linda. I can't keep being your safety net, your backup plan, your emotional support system. You need to figure out how to live with the choices you've made without dragging me down with you. I know, she whispered. I know you're done with me. I needed to feel like I mattered to you one more time, even if it was based on a lie. I stood up, suddenly exhausted by the weight of 25 years of loving someone who had never learned how to love me back honestly. For what it's worth, I said, you did matter to me. For a very long time, you mattered more than anything else in the world. But you've spent so much energy trying to manipulate how I feel about you that you never just tried being someone worth caring about. Linda nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'm going to sell the house, she said quietly. Move somewhere new, where no one knows my history. Try to start over and see if I can learn how to be honest with people. I hope you can, I said and meant it. I really do hope you figure out how to be happy, Linda, but I won't be part of that journey. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back one last time. The fake police report, the blackmail note, destroy them. If anyone ever finds out you fabricated evidence of a crime, even a crime you didn't commit, you could face serious legal trouble. I will. Thank you, John, for everything, for helping me even when you shouldn't have, for forgiving me more times than I deserved, for loving me when I was too broken to love you back properly. I left Linda's house for the last time as the sun was beginning to rise over our old neighborhood. I felt lighter than I had in years, as if I'd finally set down a weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten how much it was hurting me. 6 months later, I received a letter forwarded from my old address. Linda had indeed sold the house and moved away to a small town in Colorado, where she'd taken a job as a bookkeeper for a family-owned business. The letter was short and to the point. No manipulation, no hidden agenda, just a simple update on her new life and a thank you for helping her realize she needed to change. She was seeing a new therapist, she wrote, one who was helping her understand the difference between being vulnerable and being manipulative. She'd joined a book club and was learning to make friends without trying to control how they felt about her. She was alone, but not lonely, learning to find value in herself that didn't depend on other people's approval. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, the letter concluded, but I wanted you to know that walking away from me was the kindest thing you could have done, for both of us. I never wrote back, but I kept the letter. Not as a reminder of what we'd lost, but as evidence that people could change if they wanted to, badly enough. As for me, I started dating again. Nothing serious at first, just coffee dates and casual dinners with women who had their own lives and interests and didn't need me to rescue them from anything. I took a part-time job with a small accounting firm, not because I needed the money, but because I missed the satisfaction of solving problems that actually had solutions. I bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood and planted a garden. I learned to cook properly instead of living on frozen dinners and takeout. I made friends with my neighbors and joined a hiking group for people over 50. For the first time in my adult life, I lived entirely for myself. No one else's needs to anticipate, no one else's emotions to manage, no one else's crises to solve. It was terrifying at first, this complete freedom from obligation and guilt. But gradually, it became the most peaceful existence I'd ever known. The heart attack that had seemed like the beginning of the end became the beginning of something better. A life measured not by how much I could endure or forgive or fix, but by how much joy I could find in simple, honest pleasures. 3 years after our final conversation, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Linda had remarried, a widower in her new town who owned a hardware store and had grown children who welcomed her into their family. I felt genuinely happy for her. She'd found what she'd been looking for all along, someone who could love her without needing to save her first. Sometimes the best ending isn't the one where everyone gets what they want. Sometimes it's the one where everyone gets what they need. Linda needed to learn how to be honest and authentic. I needed to learn how to value my own peace above someone else's drama. We both got exactly what we needed, which was to be free of each other. And that, it turned out, was the greatest gift we could have given ourselves.